What's up, people? I'm gonna attempt to do this. I don't know how it's gonna work out. Probably people are gonna come and bug me about Uber rides, because there's a whole lot of foot traffic around here, and there's probably a whole lot of drunk people around here, and they all think that I am their driver. So pardon the interruptions if there are any. I'm gonna read the first 10 pages that Steven sent me of his book. Took me a long time to get to it, but I really enjoy it so far, and he sent me the rest. So assuming this goes okay and he okays it, I might end up reading the book in sections, but we'll see how it goes. So this is unpublished. Steven Schitzo Lawsen. Some of you probably have subscribed to him because I mentioned him on a couple videos. Unpublished book. I guess he wrote it years back, 5 or 6 or 7. I don't remember exactly how long ago, but he is wanting to get it published. So whoever he did not send this to, I know he sent it to a few people that requested it, including myself. But for the most part, this is going to be new for you all and new to the world because it's not published. So, and I have no idea if I have any book reading skills. Narrating? I guess narrating? I don't know. So bear with me. And I'm tired. It's been a long day, but I'm going to do my best. So Steven's book, I guess it's 3 books. The Bitter Scroll, Sigma Coven, and The Age of Aquarius. I guess those are the 3 book titles. Yeah. So book 1, The Bitter Scroll and The Seven Thunders. And I'm reading this off of my other broken iPhone. I don't know if you can see that, but the screen's all shattered, so I'm gonna be perhaps stumbling over words. So again, bear with me. All right, here we go. Saturday, the end, the start of a new beginning. Sweet Home Alabama skipped in my mother's old dusty CD player, a constant loop of wailing guitar solos, southern sound waves that rolled off into infinity. The song settled into oblivion, white noise, angels, drowned out by agony, the subatomic beehive buzz of that skull-shattering torture. Micro-lightning nerve endings carried hurricane pain signals from my leg up my spine and exploded into my brain like a million combustion engines igniting all at once. A symphony of demons played broken, out-of-tune lyres in my ears at conceivable frequencies. The beginning of the song struck up again. I barely noticed that time. What was that light? Where did it come from? Did Mr. Riley remember? I was beginning to fear that I was going insane. Eagles were in the sky that night. The pain persisted. I laid there in the big soft armchair, being absorbed like water into its huge cushions, feeling the weight of my body bring me towards the center of the earth, while my soul pulled up in the opposite direction. My body felt insignificant in that chair, just a throw draped over it, a decoration in my mother's southern living room. The body is the corpuscle, the husk for an evolving, growing spirit. That's in italics. My eyes scanned the room drunkenly. They wandered from corner to ceiling, passing over the lamp and fixing on the rickety ceiling fan for long lengths of time. It twirled above me, a hypnotic dervish. My vision blotted out, faded. I felt myself spinning again, hanging from the rafters of that tiny dogwood shed. I could only faintly make out the sound of the fan's motor, and I could not for the life of me feel its breeze. No more mortal pleasures remained for me, and I didn't much mind. I would soon abandon this lifeboat in favor of the open sea. In the back of my brain, I could hear the song restarting again, and it seemed to be slipping from me, the music falling from my ears as it tried to enter. Another song fades in, a new song in the key of E flat, but strangely familiar, a low and ever-present mantra of the unseen. I lifted my hand toward the kitchen door as if to pull myself away from this silent song and lack of sense that my soul seemed to be heading toward. My cracked lips called for my mother, but it wasn't my voice that creaked out. It was like listening to a recording of myself in slow motion. The sound of some other boy's voice in my body terrified me. Torrents of tears flowed down my face in warm waves like living water. Mr. Riley, my Longinus, his shovel is his spear. Mom, Mom! I tried to scream. It came back to me again in a long, eerie, reverberating echo. I was fevered and sweating between the pillows of the armchair. My foot was set to rest crookedly on a white wooden stool that held up my broken leg. My split bone peeked through the pale yellow flesh of my leg, and the skin was bruised black and blue all the way through, from my thigh to my ankle. Blood weaved its way through the white shroud wrapped loosely around it. Mom, please, I tried again, and my voice was less of a stranger's this time. She stumbled her way out of the kitchen with her white dress pulled up in the front, showing her underwear as she lumbered towards me. What do you want, Jacob? I'm trying to win back our money at some cards I'm playing with Mr. Riley. Hearts! Now, what do you need, sugar? She held a bottle of Crown loosely in her fingers, the intoxicating Canadian spirit held heavy in the air like a stagnant pool of utter drunkenness. She normally took it with Coke. This time she drank it straight, her blue aura tinged with red, the pulse of her insanity. Mean queen. So much pain, Mom. Please, could you give me something for my leg? It hurts so bad. She took a swig. She looked down at my leg and swayed towards it too fast. My mouth dropped open as she came towards me. I tried to pull my leg out of the way, but it was too late. Her knee bumped my ankle off the stool. My leg bent a way I didn't think was possible with only one knee. Sweet Home Alabama had entered its 30th guitar solo, and the batteries began to die, stretching out every chord like the wail of a dying dog. Panic? Panic? I called hopefully. No dog came running. Why you hollering, boy? What's wrong with you? She studied my face in the way only a drunk can do. Her eyes jumped as she saw that bloody broken appendage now laying half on the low stool, half on the floor. Oh, your leg. You need some pain pills. Honey, I'll get them for you. This was her way of being a great mother to me. Mr. Riley appeared at the tall, dark kitchen entrance, framed from behind by the red glow of the television. He was a large man, and when his blood ran hot with alcohol, his steps became clumsily aggressive. He knew what he wanted. He stampeded towards my mother, the tipsy nurse, who stood over me as I twisted in pain. He lifted her into the air with a low moan of appreciation, a whistle mixed up in a growl. He placed kisses on the nape of her neck, his hands massaging her breasts as they fell out of the sides of her dress. She laughed and swatted coyly at his knuckles. Honey, I'll be right back with your pills, she said, as she pulled Mr. Riley towards the bedroom. Skinner's wail was replaced by my mother's. A while later, she came back in through the hallway, seeming more sober and sweeping the hair out of her face. It was much more tangled than when she left, but her dress was on straight again. She had 4 different pills in her fist, all of different sizes and colors, and she palmed them into my mouth without water or a word of comfort. She headed back into the kitchen. I gladly devoured every pill, and I thought about my dad. If only I could make it to the phone. The narcotics made my vision stream, and the light behind that object's reflected, trailed behind my eyes like sparklers, but duller, further off. Each blink took 100 years. My hands went numb, and then, thank God, my leg did too. The warm opium wave broke across every cell in my body, filling me with hope as the anguish dissipated and was replaced by a certain strange tingling, the beginnings of an opiate ecstasy. The naughty nurse came back with a cup of warm water in an unclean cup. She pressed it against my lips at such an angle that I couldn't drink from it. She held it there for a few seconds, and her frustration grew. She turned the cup sideways, and the water spilled into my cracked mouth and down the front of my shirt, which was already soaked with sweat. I was grateful. I could finally feel the breeze of the fan as it evaporated and cooled the water. I smiled at my mother. The pills stupefied and filled me with an unknown but not unwelcome inebriation. I looked at the television set, but didn't really watch it. It looked like a puppet show on LSD. I was aware that I was talking to myself, but I have no concept of what I was saying. I became like my mother in her drunken stupor, unable to comprehend reality. My brain was slipping into a separate dimension altogether. When my mother came back later with more pills, I couldn't count them. They were too close together, and my deceitful eyes made their edges dissolve and their colors mix together like a piece of abstract art in her palm. I fed off of them in a fit, afraid of the returning pain and knowledge that my leg was in two pieces in front of me. I knew that I might never walk again. I knew I might not ever leave this armchair. I guess that was why Mr. Riley couldn't go back home to his wife that night. He had to please my mother. She alone could keep him safe now, and she knew where he buried the two bodies. I guess that was why I didn't go to the hospital. I cried when I thought about how many pills I had taken. It was a good possibility that she gave me too many. I considered shoving a finger down the back of my throat, but I knew if I emptied my stomach, I would have no respite from this land of pain. This deserted wasteland of looming black peaks and wind that blew hot ash across my face as I navigated its terrible landscapes. My finger entered my mouth and it felt like I was probing a dry rat hole, not a boy's mouth. I wasn't too scared when I didn't gag the first time, but 5 minutes later I began to worry. The instinct for survival kicked in and I deeply desired to live. My duty had not yet been done. I jabbed my fingers into my throat like a knife into the gut of Caesar, but no vomit came. Mother! Mom! Was I shouting? I didn't know. Mom, help me, I'm dying, please help me. I heard them laughing and the radio was turned up. More Skinnered, but this time it was Freebird. My mother always liked other boys' attention, but never my own. The song finally stopped skipping and I felt my heart stop beating. The rhythm of the night and day, life and death, defeated. The immortal spirit was made manifest in my setting sun, my sleep and the onset of eternal night, and more dreams to come. Balance. Yellow boots on the Odin boy. My spirit became light. I could feel the void of lifelessness take me and I was gone. Black. Dead. I missed my dog, Panic. I loved him very much. Where was Thupton? Pastor Casey. Pastor Casey. White aura fading, white light growing, silver tunnel straight and narrow. Emily? My sweet dead Emily. Freebird, Freebird. Freebird gotta fly away. The best part of me is free. Eagles. Chapter 1. Sunday. The year was 1994, the year I exited my childhood and my innocence. The term puberty was no longer descriptive of a stage of sexual development, but a moment in time when existence began to feel unbearable. At least that's what it was to me. Real life was really just beginning, but I restlessly began seeking something, maybe a deeper knowledge of self or a glimpse of the spectacular. I became aware of myself as part of something bigger. I began to feel cramped living in society. I could feel something gestating within my entire generation. When I think about that time of my life, it comes to me again, all in live streaming color. When I try to recall how it all happened, I'm there again. My birthday was only a week away. It was the time of year referred to as Indian summer. It was one of those off days between summer and fall where the weather doesn't quite know what it should do with itself. If it should be warm or sunny or windy and shrill. These were always my favorite days when the leaves held crisp, audible conversations with the breeze, and the trees waved to birds as they passed above, out of the reach of their loving outstretched fingers. I was sitting on a stump near Pastor Casey's parsonage that looked out over the long, blushing fields of my childhood. Tall cattails and tresses of honeysuckle scented the air and gave form to the wind, making the invisible quite tangible. The sun was setting and my stomach was speaking to me in angry fits. I hadn't eaten since noon, but my hunger only fueled my daydreams. I sat there with my legs crossed on the short, splintered stump, imagining dinosaurs pouring out of the grove, flooding the field with their reptilian charge and disrupting the gently lulling sea of green. T-Rexes stomped out into the open meadow that I peered down into. A pterodactyl flew out of the September sunset of melting yellow wax. Stegosauruses and brontosauruses lumbered their way out of the forest, knocking down pine trees with their massive necks, calling out in their sweet, singing whale calls. This was my escape. This was my self-mandated exile from society, my voice in the wilderness. I stood up, my mouth hanging open in awe, admiring their large, scaly bodies, all different colors and shapes. Some bony, some feathered like their avian heirs. The pterodactyl flew over my head, spreading its large fanned wings as it swooped over the treetops, knocking me to the ground with a great gust. Feathers were settling on the ground around me. Mysterious Mayan flute music was playing. Music that was unknown but familiar to me, heralding the arrival of the moon goddess, Ixchel. The dinosaur soared high into the orange southern sky, and the wind it stole with it lingered behind in a purple vapor trail. Lying on a bed of pine straw, I watched it circle overhead and studied the lines of lavender that it manipulated with its long lizard tail. The pterodactyl spelled out a single word in the sky with red and blue smoky letters, a chemtrail of killer stardust blazing with dream embers. A single word formed from dust and smoke, the smoke of temple incense, the dream dust you brush off of ancient bones, the dust of earth apocalypse, the dust of new life. Believe. I spoke it softly with dry lips, and the word entered my soul. Believe. The pterodactyl flew off like a red laser toward my best friend's house. And then, just as suddenly as they appeared, they retreated back into the black forest, retracing their steps and repairing the snapped pines. As they disappeared, the whale calls they bellowed played out back to me in reverse. They whispered of their demise. They spoke of extinction. "Jacob, get your ass in the house!" I sprang to my feet and returned to reality in a flash. It had suddenly gotten much darker, and I headed back across the street and past the tiny Lutheran church named Bethlehem. I hid in the wilderness that surrounded my house until it grew so dark that my mind birthed demons in the night's shade far scarier than anything my mother or Mr. Riley could create with their neglect or fury. Most kids that were my age weren't scared of the dark or the hidden beasts that peered out of the shadows, waiting to entangle them in tentacles. But I wasn't like most kids. My frightened mind wouldn't rest, and so nightmares infiltrated my day-to-day life. Mr. Riley was much more violent with my mother now than when I was a child, and the more violent he became, the more I chose to brave the unknown terrors of the dark. That field was my place of meditation, my imagination land of safety, but at the end of the day I had to return to my mother's prison. As I climbed up my steep, potholed dirt driveway, I heard my mother and Mr. Riley talking in the kitchen with loud and angry voices. The only time they stopped fighting was to kiss, and the only time they stopped kissing was to go to my mother's room. And then the only thing that would put an end to that noise making was when the endless flow of alcohol they consumed throughout the course of their day put them in a coma or fueled a new, more robust fight. This was their ritual, the order of daily events that mapped out my life. I opened the screen door. I was welcomed by the pungent aroma of burnt pot roast and a puff of smoke from the kitchen as it sent to vouch for the all too familiar burnt meat smell. All of a sudden, my appetite was gone. The smoke filled my nose and made my stomach churn. I snuck past their voices and into my bedroom. My home was a small trailer, a place of creaking footsteps and sharp corners to snag your skin on. No place to grow up in at all. My mother collected pieces of nostalgia, southern relics, horseshoes hung on the wall from largest to smallest. From a distance, it looked like the living room was growing dark, iron lizard scales. A chicken crate with a pane of glass was the coffee table. There was a butter churn in the corner and an old rocking chair that looked like it was about to collapse. The wallpaper was one of those cheap dollar store rolls, little white ducks with blue ribbons around their necks and wings spread in mock flight, one leg stretched out behind them. My room was not much better. It had been my grandmother's before the cancer turned on her stomach and killed her. Before she passed on, I occupied a doorless space which is now the living room. At least here I could close the door to be alone or open a window if I wanted. I was grateful, but in a sour way. The room held the musk of the elderly, a mixture of bad perfume, medication, and stale cotton. The mattress was concrete, and my spine felt its torture every morning. It was as if the springs suffered from rigor mortis after my grandmother kicked the bucket under this bed's very sheets. It felt more like a medieval rack than a bed. The dresser was covered with dust, and I never stirred it or opened its drawers. It still held all of my grandmother's nightgowns and underwear. I tried not to even look at it. The bed was nice, though, even though the mattress was hard as a rock. It was a big, thick oak bed that was polished brilliantly and coated with a lustrous varnish. It stood so high off the ground that I had to literally climb into it when I wanted to go to sleep. But most of the time I spent in bed, I was actually in the bed. It was pulled back from the wall just enough to create a small passage for me to crawl through. It didn't stand on legs like typical beds. It just had decorative siding that went all the way down to the floor and wrapped around like a large parachute wedding gown carved out of ancient wood. The only way to get under it was from the side of the bed, and once inside, it was like a new room, complete and secret, my personal kingdom of consciousness. I kicked off my shoes as I entered my room, and in one motion, perfected by repetition, my stride mutated into a hunched-over walk and then melted into a crawl as I snaked my way under the bed and into my secret cave. My hands effortlessly found my flashlight in the dark, and I clicked it on. My magic torch would shed a light only I can see. Laying there on my belly, I opened up my red spiral notebook and flipped to a blank page. In black ballpoint, I wrote "Believe" on the first line in dramatic uppercase letters. Next to it, I drew a pterodactyl with bright iridescent scales. I closed the notebook and placed it neatly back in the corner of my hideaway. I never knew why I wrote these things down, bits of shattered reality, tangled shorthand notes of fiction, possibly glimpses of a hidden truth. But my notebooks were filled with them, and maybe one day they would mean something to me. I kept them like time capsules to uncover and reopen when I was mature enough to grasp their full meaning. Of course, I didn't know it then. Then I only respond to a pineal urge to capture something in space and time, to document a feeling welling up inside of me. Like an ancient caveman safe within the depths of his home, marking his rock walls with shamanistic paint, often his own blood. And that's it. 10 pages. That's an intro to Stephen's book. So I hope you enjoyed that. Stephen, thank you for letting me read this, and thank you for sending me the rest of it. I will get to it when I can, and if you're okay with it, and if I'm able to read that much, then maybe I'll start reading the rest of it here. That took a long time for just 10 pages though. Anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed that, and let me know what you think of it. I will leave a link to Stephen's video where he's talking about his book, and you can go to him if you would like to request a copy of it, or if you would just like to speak to him in general. So anyway, yeah. Hope everybody's doing well. Bye.